Hello, I think I'll do a YouTube video, Stone's YouTube video, what I think about Donald Trump becoming president. Because I did a video a couple weeks ago, request video, um, like, what do I think about Donald Trump versus Hillary? Who am I going to vote for? And I said I'd vote for Hillary Clinton. I voted for Gary Johnson 4 years ago. and um, But this time I went for Hillary Clinton because I really didn't like Donald Trump. Uh, he's a bad businessman. He went bankrupt 6 times. One of those times he went bankrupt, it was he had some casinos in Atlantic City, the Mario Lago and something else, and then he opened up the Trump Tower, and um, it put the other ones out of business. So you'd have to be kind of dumb if you lose casinos where it's so straightforward. The house always wins. Um, and also to be in the gambling business too, I think is not admirable. Gambling is not healthy. Um, and Trump vodka, trying to sell it to the Russians. Um, Trump, his airline didn't do well because he spent too much money outfitting it for like to make it look like flashy, even though it's just short little business trips around the East Coast. Um, and his general attitude. I did a video about Donald Trump, um, like in 2008 or something, because I liked his style with the Apprentice, because it shined a light in those days on the inner workings of a world. It was one of the first um, reality shows, and I thought that was cool. I like that. And I may have even said, at that time I thought maybe even be a good president. It's a good model to follow. Um, who's open and talks and shares, um, and to imagine. And so now my idea is changing a little bit. I really didn't like Trump, but now that if he's president, my philosophy is that you should support your president because it's the person, because we're in a democracy, and it's the person who everybody voted for and wants. And it's a good way to keep unity for the country by supporting the president, and and what I mean by supporting the president would be just trying to reevaluate and maybe change your attitude a little bit. Have a more optimistic. It's good to be eternally optimistic, and one quality of the eternally optimistic person has is that they will always try to put a positive spin on everything no matter what. And so Donald Trump wins, and so let's try to put a positive spin on it and say, okay, well, maybe he isn't that bad. Um, a lot of people who did business with him don't like him. The guy who wrote The Art of the Deal thinks he wished a more appropriate title would be the sociopath. Um, he just yelled at people and didn't write the book, and it was just a dick. But he's got a lot of people around him. He has a family who's loyal to him, and the people around him are loyal to him, and so. My new idea of Donald Trump is, let's say, to try to go back to, because somebody even gave me a request video like 6 months ago, say something good about Donald Trump. So this will be that request video too. Good things about Donald Trump. So if you were to get into the White House and have it like The Apprentice, and let people see the inner workings, do lots of press conferences, explain what he's doing, and film the business meetings he has with his cabinet, then yeah, that would be really cool. He's friends with a lot of progressive people. He was a Democrat 3 years ago. He's friends with Jesse Ventura. Um, so and he seems to be able to get along with normal, kind of simple people. And that's what people wanted, just like the regular guy's guy. And so I took a step back and I'm comparing Donald Trump with Hillary Clinton. And I guess for the video camera, Donald Trump with Hillary Clinton. All right, Donald Trump with Hillary Clinton. The right and the left. Yeah, so who's more crooked? Okay, well, Donald Trump is like a failed businessman, but he's also successful. He was successful in a TV show. He's successful in his real estate. He's successful in marketing himself, and he won president, and in kind of even not just in the TV show, but creating something new, right? So those are a lot of successes, even though he had 6 bankruptcies. Now Hillary Clinton. Let's look at Hillary Clinton. Well, because let's talk about like good things and bad things for the country. What you've done for the country. He declared bankruptcy and he took money and he took advantage of the tax codes and he bought Chinese steel. But that's stuff that every business person does. Like you're supposed to do that almost. Of those rich corporate people that got to take care of their business. So what did Hillary Clinton do? Well, she actually did a lot worse if you're going to compare her with her husband. Like they're one and the same, and I would do that. I think it's fair to do that. I mean, not about the sexual escapades, but about the political stuff. If you're a political couple, you would expect them to be politically aligned, because that's what their job is. They're politics, so they're like a team, a political team. So, Clinton repealed the Glass-Steagall Act, put in place at the end of the or what got us out of the Great Depression, so that the bankers protected us from getting into another Great Depression. It's what caused the Great Depression. Preventing bankers from using normal people's money to gamble to make themselves rich, And so if they lose, we pay for it, and if they win, they get even richer. So it's this perfect scheme to make the rich richer. And he repealed that, and then she took hundreds of thousands of dollars of from the bankers. So kind of like campaign finance. And about the campaign finance, she got the DNC to funnel all the like Democratic money to her for her ads when they're not in. I mean, I guess it was legal to do that, but it was still not fair. Like they took advantage of the loophole. And there's some other things she did to cheat Bernie Sanders out of the nomination. They had the DNC shut down his website and some other things. So, and then all this stuff that came out in the last week about how she took millions of dollars from King of Morocco and then from Saudi Arabia for the Clinton Foundation. And it's just one corrupt thing after the other. And so if you're going to take personality out of the picture situation and, not pay attention to how qualified the people are or not, and just look at how corrupt they are, I would say that Clinton appears to be a lot more corrupt than Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a bad businessman. He's dumb. He puts himself under just because he wants to see his name up on lights. He would keep building casinos as though people are going to keep coming. And I heard people told him, all the business people said, don't do it. It doesn't make sense. And he did it anyway. But that's about all you can get on him. I mean, he has this evil look in his eye, like Kevin Spacey from House of Cards. Like he really has killed people, and he's got all the mannerisms of a gangster, and and in his TV show, he was very authoritarian, and they only cared about money, and he's just not a likable guy. But he he's not as corrupt as Hillary. I mean, he didn't do all those things. It's kind of like it is like upsetting the apple cart and getting somebody new who doesn't isn't beholden to all these deals that were just about to get in place. And instead he'll align himself with the most conservative um, people in America and get more conservative um, Supreme Court judges in and everything. But I think he'll be a worse politician overall with the laws and the appointing of judges. But that's not the only thing about being a president. There's lots of stuff about being a president. It's really apparent if you study history. When a new king comes in, it's kind of like nowadays when a new president comes in, only magnified by 10. Like here, they'd appoint, they'd get out some people and they'd appoint some new people and they'd redecorate the White House. But that's about as far as it goes. But in the past, the king had all power. Like he could, if he started dressing a certain way and hanging out in all the ballrooms and dressing a certain way, it would trickle down to the whole country, and he could get the whole country to start dressing in a certain way. Like they were all powerful in everything. And I think Donald Trump, even though he'll make bad decisions, bad political decisions, because he's dumb and he's in that rich guy world, just trying to keep the rich white guy rich. He will change the political atmosphere, and he will, kind of like how Bernie Sanders' presence drug Hillary Clinton to the left and made her start talking about wealth discrepancy. Donald Trump's presence in the White House, if he acts like I hope he does, and I hope he talks a lot and he turns the White House into a reality show, and he shares a lot and he explains a lot. I don't see any reason why he really would do that. He did The Apprentice because it made him money and it made him a star. But I'm hoping that maybe some of his personality, all of his, and his real, saying whatever you want will cause people, all the other politicians to do that. And I think that's really important. That politicians act like human beings because you can see through them. And, people hated Donald Trump for who he was, thought he was a dick, but, maybe he's just a normal guy, and his normal guyness just blows up to making him look like a dick. The pussy comment, grabbing him by the pussy. I wouldn't have a president. I wouldn't want to have a president who would say stuff like that, but it's not a deal breaker for me because it just makes the person real. These politicians, they're so fake. It's like, even Barack Obama, he was talking about Donald Trump the other day, and he was doing that folksy, sing-songy stuff. Like, it's like, oh my God, it was like painful to listen to Barack Obama try to do that. And Hillary Clinton kind of does the same thing. Like, it's just acting, and I got really sick of that too. No, but I think the reason that Donald Trump won, though, is that. But I think the main reason he won is the immigration thing. Normal people don't have the power to make laws, and I think a study group even studied it with numbers, and they found out, policy is 0% of policy is set by people's opinion. If you look at marijuana, what was it, like 85-90% of people or something? Oh wait, no. Well, the wealth discrepancy and the Glass-Steagall and that stuff. Everybody wants to have universal health insurance, but we don't see it because the rich donors make the policy, because the politicians who the people vote for were put there by their donors, and then rich donors actually become politicians, and so yeah, I guess if we're gonna, if the ridiculousness of our political system was gonna get to some kind of crazy crescendo to show everybody how far it's gotten, sometimes that's to get really advanced. We could have gotten to the plastic politician or to the crazy rich idiot with fascist tendencies. Um, and we went with a crazy rich idiot with fascist tendencies. But I think he's a bigger change, which is what we want. Any kind of change is good because it helps us figure out what we want. Um, it helps fine tune um, us. Yeah, so um, yeah, I lost my train of thought. We got the most. Um, um, yeah, Dick, rich guy. Um, right, because he wanted to do the immigration. Now, let me talk about that. I have a friend who's a Trump supporter, voting for Trump, and we were talking. I asked him why, and he said because he was a computer programmer, and he was working with a bunch of Indians, and it was just him and a bunch of Indians, like a couple guys, a couple Americans, a bunch of Indians, and so he felt like he was in India, and they all speak Indian to each other, and it made him feel isolated. And then he went to his local park, and the whole giant park, it was just hundreds of Indians because, and he said because the Indians get hired and they move in and they bring their entire family and they live in these tiny little, like they all pack like sardines in these tiny little apartment buildings, and they get hired because they work for less, and they move here and they come here with the intention of immigrating, just like everybody else, immigrating to America and becoming Americans. Um, and he said that was not fair because there were lots of like Americans, computer programmers, who wanted the job, but they couldn't get hired because they were hiring Indians, and then they couldn't pay off their student loan debt. And so now it's kind of hard to gauge the extent of that kind of stuff happening. I don't know if we have a government um, surveillance program, which we should have, that keeps in track of all the companies that hire all the illegals and or foreigners, and just to know how much it's growing and what's going on and how much which neighborhoods are becoming foreign, because um, at one point you get to a saturation level with anything, you know, and we need to know what that is because it can cause problems. It causes people to vote people like Trump in. Um, Hitler was voted in overwhelmingly, and his platform was to kill Jews when he was getting, running. That's what he was saying he wanted to do, and so now Trump comes in, and because people voted him in because it's the only way people feel like they have any power, and even people were even afraid to admit that they were going to vote for Trump. Like it's not even cool to say you're going to vote for Trump, yet he wins anyway. So there are so many people voting for Trump because that's what they feel like. But it's not cool to say, get out Indians. Um, but but that's one way that people can actually make their voices heard and influence policy is with their vote. And so apparently enough Americans were like, you know what, we're done with these foreigners coming here. I think that's what got him elected. We're done with seeing Indians in my company, in my park. And they're worried about they think that they're actually going to bring our country down. And there actually is something to say about that. There's some truth to that, and I think it's good that we talk about it. So I think I'll talk about it some because I do feel it myself that this country is a white Christian country, and I never thought that I would say this. Like I was always considered myself the biggest, like if I was in high school or college, the biggest like multicultural hippie guy around. I don't like the fundamentalist Christians. I grew up Buddhist. My parents are Buddhist. I married a third world brown skinned girl. But I study a lot of history, and if you study a lot of history, there's this one aspect to history that you cannot ignore. It's one of the prime truths of history, and that is the fact that there's this thing called um, social development. Um, our society develops over time. Even though people die, uh, there's this cultural thing that just everything just keeps growing and growing, and so we get more and more smart as time goes on. You know, we invent new technology, whether it's literature or technological or religious, and so it's a slow going process. And the culture that we came from um, was very successful. We created all these. We created the Industrial Revolution and created, this country and all the infrastructure and all the technology and with all the hard work. And Europe does too, and they do very well. Um, and that's a lot different from how third world countries are, like Southeast Asia or India or you know um, South America and China. And why is that? Um, well, it's if you study history, you cannot ignore the fact that there was a big difference between like civilization and then the barbarians. Like the Roman Empire and then the barbarians. And the Roman Empire was always more civilized, and it grew up. Their religion became more and more civilized. They used to throw criminals to the lions, and then they originally were throwing Christians to the lions, and then they made that illegal, and they outlawed torture and this kind of stuff, like religiously through law. And that's what people say when they say white, Judeo-Christian, European heritage. It's that thousands of years progression of your laws, but not just your law and your religious law, but your culture and all the values that you're passed down to your children over and over again. And it ends up making a society where people are very, they work hard and they look after each other and they see themselves as a big unit. The Roman Empire, they see themselves as a big unit. Then the Roman Empire falls, but Europe is now this big country of Christians, this big unit. And it did very well. They had a lot of good laws and good values. Turn the other cheek, share, social programs, not seeking revenge, don't murder, this kind of stuff. And I think that's why Europe and America is better off than like the Philippines. They just elected a guy. His platform was to kill drug dealers, stoners, and stuff, and so he kills thousands of them in his first couple of weeks. Because I think it's a inferior culture, because they didn't have the same general social development. They didn't have their big, empire back. Now, if you want to, then developed slowly through time. If you want to compare America with China, China doesn't have nearly of a developed religious system as the Western world does. Their religion is Confucius, which came from 2,500 years ago, and it's just a set of a few sayings, simple sayings, and then Taoism, which is just simple sayings of, but they don't have like they're just simple like observational sayings, but they're not like 10 commandments, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not lie, It's not like a well written out instruction manual of the best way to be. And Europe has that, starting with the Jews with the 10 Commandments, and then their belief in one God, which is very important. That brings unity, and so then we bring all that over to America, and it was a great model. America was a colony of the very best Europeans, the Roman Empire, like the English. The Roman Empire was in England, um, so all the social development of the Roman Empire, and then North Europeans, white people. Um, I think white people are um, whoops are better that are the best race genetically, and I may have said this before, and I've been called racist. Um, maybe it's for I don't think I've ever said that though, but I was having the idea that they were better genetically for creating a society that's healthy um, because of the background in Europe. There are always these hordes of white people, Goths and Vikings coming down and invading the Romans, and they'd get assimilated or they'd get their asses kicked, and then they finally kick the Romans' asses. But they come down because the North is very susceptible to Mother Nature, and if you have a few good years and then a bad year, a bunch of people get squeezed out, and you either have to go south, risking your life on some big trek through foreign lands and fighting your way, or you have to get killed off by the people you're competing for the land for, um, or you have to kind of, and also when you're preparing for the winter, you have to get up and do it or you die. And so I think that kind of makes people stick by their guns and not lie and cheat or anything, just be straight with you, because back in Europe, you would either it's like you either fight or you die. There's just no space. If you're in Africa, where all the black people are, if you get in a squabble with somebody, it's not that big of a deal. If they take your hut because they have a bigger gang than you just go over to the woods and hang out and eat bananas on another tree, And so you just can always find the easiest way out. And so it's just those subtle things which made America a great colony. People just went there on their own money. They paid their own money. Like on the Mayflower, it was just a bunch of families got together and chipped in and rented a boat and went over and set it up themselves and set up America themselves, and then basically colonized the whole country. Like my hometown, Boulder, is a colony. Like people came here and they already knew everything. They had your town platter, you had your this, your that. They just set it up out of nowhere, and it was a great model with the Christianity and um, just the simple values that the white Christians have, and it made a great country. Now, other countries that had other backgrounds failed, didn't do nearly as well, like Mexico. You hear about Mexico in history books a lot. People talking about even the 1800s saying that, being like, oh yeah, Mexico is not, their model is all messed up. South America and Spain has a bad model. Spain has always been a more backward than everywhere else in Europe, in the Mediterranean world. In the Roman Empire, Italy had 1,192 cities, and France and Belgium had 1,200, and Spain only had 350. Before the Roman Empire, it was just like Iberian backwoodsmen. They were known as just the more backwards. And it makes sense. Even in the Middle Ages, it was more backward because it's right there at the bridge of the South. And down there in Northern Africa, you just have like people, like nomadic groups. That's where the troglodytes lived, the people who didn't even have words. They were in modern-day Morocco. And it's just because of the terrain. It's just it was more plush in those days. Most of their grain from Rome was coming from Africa, but it was still more deserty, like the Sahara Desert. So it was just more conducive to tribesmen, like the Scythians up in Mongolia, and so they're not as civilized. And so when they cross into Europe, just as people move around a lot, Spain was kind of like the place that was processing those more primitive people. And so it was like a buffer zone, sort of. Spain has always been like that. So, um, so And then Spain had some bad history in the 1500s. They Ferdinand and Isabella, they tried to attack England with the Armada, ended up getting their asses totally kicked. They did that with the money that they spent, that they made mining gold, just raping South America of gold and bringing it back to Europe. But yeah, in order to create Spain, the Ferdinand and Isabella, they borrowed money from Jews in order to take over the other neighboring kingdoms, and then didn't pay the Jews back, kicked them out. Jews had to move up to like Scotland and Ireland, and then started the Spanish Inquisition, which is when they kicked out all the Muslims from southern Spain and all the Jews, and you could only be Spanish, and they killed like hundreds of people, and it was an ugly thing, and it went on for 350 years. So then they went over to South America and set up this encomienda system where it was like actual by law. You'd like be worth more, and it was really similar actually to like back in ancient times when the Gauls, when the Franks first took over from the Roman Empire back in the early 500s, Clovis and those guys, they actually had prices what people were worth. Like a Frank was worth like 50 pieces of gold. A Roman was worth like 10. And then like whatever job you had, it was a specific piece, and it ranged all the way down to like 8 pieces of gold. So from 250 down to 8, people had an actual price. And that's basically what the encomienda system in South America was. You had a price based on what you were worth, something based on what you were. If you were born in Spain and came from Spain, you're worth the most. If you were European in heritage, but you were born in the New World, you're actually worth a little bit less. But if you were half native, you were worth less. If you're all native, you were worth the lowest. And it's kind of like that now in South America. You know, they're like third world countries, so you can't trust anybody, and they can't. I lived in Chile for 5 years. I was married for 5 years. Married for 3 years, but I was with her 5 years. You know. Argentina barely functions as a country. I taught English there for 2 months, and I never got paid. And that's a long story, but they just lied to me over and over again. Why couldn't they just tell me they couldn't pay me? They're just, yeah. And it's because of the encomienda system. People just feel like people just do what they're told, and there's no upward mobility, and there's no communication between the classes, and so nobody trusts each other. And so you can't have a functioning society. Nobody, says the truth or does anything that they say they're going to do, and it doesn't work as well. America is a lot different. And America is kind of like along the same lines as Northern Europe, and so we're doing very well. And I wouldn't have thought like this if I had never traveled, but I did travel, and I saw how third world countries, they never tell the truth, like pretty much never. I don't want to go into details because I've done too much in that on this video, but just their values, and then the murdering, like in Philippines, and blood vengeance, murdering, whatever that's called, all the little things. Okay, that's what you get from Judeo-Christian culture, which it's a culture that is like a continuing culture that has been growing for 3,000 years incrementally. The Romans, even in like 500 BC, no, 650 BC, when they tore this guy apart, Lucius Manetius, when Rome had battles with Alba Longa, they tore him in 4 pieces. But they told the story. They're like, "Oh, but we never do that. We're the most like clement country people ever. We only did that because he's really bad." So they've always prided themselves on how civilized they are, how much you can get pardons, and you can see a trial by jury, and you can defend yourself, and this kind of stuff, this follow laws. And so that's what people, I think that's what people are freaking out about in America. They're seeing, and I wouldn't have thought this myself. I wouldn't have had this idea if I'd never traveled, but I traveled and I saw how other countries are, and I came back like, oh my God, I love America. And, but I guess other people have more sense than I do, more intuition. They're not as idealistically blind as I am. More in touch with the basic instincts, which I kind of was ignoring. But yeah, it's true. And I never considered this until I studied history, but it's true. When you study history, you start to, I mean, that's the lens you look through. You're looking at history. You're looking at a country as though it's a person, like your son. And as he's 4, he knows this. As he's 10, he knows this. When he's 15, he's more mature. That's how you look at a country, like a person. All the little things, all the little laws, the little customs that come and go, and when it grows. And when the customs, what happened with Rome is the last couple of emperors of Rome, they had this one emperor called Elagabalus, and he was a Syrian. He was like a Middle Eastern guy. He wasn't European. He comes into Rome, and he was just dismantling Rome. He was taking, he married a Vestal virgin. They're supposed to be virgins. He married a Vestal virgin. He tore down statues, brought up Eastern statues, started hanging out the palace in his Eastern garb, and he ended up getting killed because people were like, "What the hell are you doing? This isn't Rome." But anyway, after that, a little bit of Rome was taken away forever. They never put the statues back, and then more and more barbarians get in there, and they in Rome, and they tear down some more statues. And I guess I'll have to talk about the when they killed off paganism and brought Catholicism, but because there were some bad things that happened with that too. They kind of sterilized Europe, even though they brought the overall religion became more developed. They did sterilize a lot of it, but what was I talking about? Yeah, but then when Rome was taken over by the Goths didn't kind of absorb Rome and keep the empire going, because everything about the empire had crumbled. The statues were gone. Their ancient traditions were gone. The Vestal virgins, they had 1,000 years. All their whole fabric, right? The little things that had been steadily dismantled by people from the outside who came in, and it was this, they call it the genius, but it was this magic that held it together, and then it just evolved, it disintegrated, and the Dark Ages were just hell compared to, you couldn't travel across Europe, people were illiterate, it crashed, and that's in the past, everybody wanted an empire. Everybody wanted civilization, even the Goths, they wanted to go into the empire and have them save them from the Huns. When it crashed for everybody. And I think that's what people are kind of worried about now. And I can understand it, because if you get you have a bunch of people, Judeo, white Christian culture in America, who have all these values, tell the truth, stand up for yourself, work hard, and then the 10 Commandments, don't kill no matter what, trial by jury, and all the different religious, they have the churches that they go to remind of all the different honorable people, King Solomon hearing people out, you know what I mean? So you have this solid culture that did very well, and then you have some other third world country that don't have any history really. Like in Indonesia, they were headhunters 100 years ago. And their religion was like what our religion was 4,000 years ago, like animalistic type of stuff. No, they, and then you get a whole bunch of them, like the Somalians, and you move them over here, and you have and then they take over a whole town, because rich people who own the company, they can make more for the company by just hiring other people, because they don't want to raise the minimum wage, right? The people people don't want to work at Tyson Foods. Well, it's because the fucking minimum wage is so low. They're like, oh, well, we can just get Somalis, so they bring Somalis in. But the problem is, those were the people who white guys, 50 or 60-year-old guys in Garden City tried to bomb. I think it would have killed the entire neighborhood of Somalis. 2,000 or 3,000 people would have died. It would have been like 9/11, if I remember correctly. That's what you're going to get. People freaking out to the point where, because they can't get jobs, or they can't get a good paying job, because third world people come in here. You could just create a third world. It's that's what these rich people are doing. You're like, oh yeah, Tyson Foods. How are we going to make more money with Tyson Foods? Let's create third world right here in America and pay them right here. Yeah, fuck it. I mean, to be in that meeting, obviously those guys wouldn't want to be filmed saying that. That's the least American thing ever. And to be in that meeting and to watch those people, I would love to see it. It would fill me with so much rage. because that's not America. That's just making you richer. That's making it possible for you to keep the minimum wage so low that nobody can do anything. Like, what job am I going to get? Like, I could get a job at Tyson and work 8 hours a day and not even have enough money to ever buy a house or have kids or anything, just work all the time. Why? Because all the third worlders are doing it. But the problem is, so that gets in the way of the wealth discrepancy. The other problem is if you get a bunch of those people and then a lot of them want to immigrate here. Now, I actually know the guy who managed Tyson Foods and managed those Somalians. And he told me they were the best workers he ever saw. And that they were only here intermittently. Migrant workers come here, work, and then come back. But a lot of people come here to move. Now, if you get a whole bunch of like neighborhoods full of third worlders who come from a third world country, I was saying this before, the opposite before, that they would just absorb, but they do. But up into a point, there's a saturation point. If you get a bunch of these third worlders into some neighborhood and then they grow up and then they have their third world town, it's basically like the country they come from in this country. That's what it is. Because you learn everything you learn from your parents and your culture. It's the little things that you're growing up with. Back in ancient Rome, if somebody was a slave and then they bought themselves to become a freeman, they had to be 4 generations of freemen before they could even enter into the government, because they needed to get the slave out of them. That's how long it took for somebody to be able to think for themselves. I mean, it's not. You don't come to America and then just become American. I mean, that's what it was like to a point. And even in the olden days, when all the different Europeans would come, like in New York, it was called New Amsterdam, they'd have these different neighborhoods. People would be speaking their native languages. The Dutch would be speaking their Dutch, cooking Dutch ovens, and then over here you'd have the Belgians speaking French, and but then they were all white, and they all had the European culture from Europe, which kept them together, and then they all eventually spoke English, and now you don't know who's Dutch heritage, who's French, you're American. But when you have third worlders coming in here, number one, like they don't have, like number one, they look different, which causes problems, makes people, causes the division. But they also don't come from Judeo-Christian culture. You're creating, it's a colony of third worlders. Like if you'd have had a bunch of Indonesians from Sumatra, throw them all into Boulder 150 years ago, do you think they would have plotted out a nice city of Boulder? No. If you fast forward to now, you'd have a bunch of headhunters running around naked, or they'd probably all die because they wouldn't know how to deal with the cold. But I mean, that's the reality. And that's what's going on now. I think people are like realizing that, and I actually kind of agree with it. I mean, white Judeo-Christian culture can bring everybody up to our level as long as we have the power, as long as we have the influence. You know what I mean? Like the numbers. If I'm the only white guy and I'm in a town in America filled with Filipinos and I smoke a bowl, it'd be like, I kill you now. That's what we do in a Filipino. You're a Filipino now. And I'm like, no, an American. No, you're a Filipino now. I know somebody who has worked with Southeast Asians, and he got ganged up on. Somebody tried to kill him. They threw a radio at his head. Because they would just talk their gibberish to each other and play the radio really loud. And they tried to tell him to turn it down, and they just attacked him. And, I mean, it's those kinds of things that'll piss people off. Like me. I'm pretty international. I spent like 10 years out of the country. I traveled from like 97 to 99, and then 2001 to like 2007. And I was out of the country. I was in Chile for 5 years and married. But so I have I got sidetracked. I lost my train of thought. So yeah, I'm a pretty international guy. But there comes a point when if I was a computer programmer and I worked in a country, and I was in America, and I worked in some program place, and I was surrounded by a bunch of Indians speaking whatever language, Hindi, to each other, and they were giving me dirty looks, and then I got fired for whatever reason, then I couldn't get a job because of all these Hindis, and I have this huge $50,000 loan to pay off, and I can't get a job. I know that I would get so pissed that I would vote for Trump. I know I would vote for Trump in a situation like that. I would have done it. I wouldn't have cared about the pussy comments. I wouldn't have cared about the failed businesses. I wouldn't have cared about, you know, him resembling Hitler so much, telling people to mass deportations. I wouldn't have cared about any of that. I would have said, this is my only chance to voice my opinion. These rich people do not care about me bringing all these foreigners into the country and hiring them for the price they can pay. You know, that's the way you keep the prices. Like, why don't you just, those rich people make so much fucking money. There's this woman, she's in the government. She's the director of whatever, commerce. What's her name? She's from, I think she's from Chicago. She's worth $2.44 billion, and she's a government worker. You know, these guys make like $50 million a year, $200 million a year. And those are the guys who make the decisions to bring third worlders in because it makes them more money. But it keeps the minimum wage. I mean, if we were a real country, they would pay me, like I could go get a job packing meat or killing a cow or something, and I could make enough money to actually, you know, buy that house and have those kids, you know. But I can't because it's the Somalis doing it for nothing. So, and actually, personally, because I was just, you know, theorizing if I lived in Garden City, but if I live here in Boulder, my supermarket that I go to, it's all third world speaking their own language. It's like, I think they're Tibetans or something. Or Burma, I don't even know, but yeah, a whole bunch of them, and it's not even a novelty to me anymore. It's like, where are the white people? And I'm in Boulder. And I can't get a job there, by the way. I can't get a job at any supermarket because I'm a stoner and they do drug testing. So we have a system set up that brings third worlders here, pays them dirt because they just love to live in America, and maybe they can be, and they bring their culture, though. This is what my friend was saying. We have a culture of like, you know, work hard and have what you have and make enough money and, you know, have opportunities. They have a culture of 1 billion people in a tiny little peninsula, and they actually believe in like Vishnu and Shiva flying around the universe, and they have no opinions about anything. You know, you can't talk to an Indian about stuff. They just, I don't know nothing, you know. And they come here and they're totally happy, packing like sardines in a room, because they're like, well, doesn't matter. We live like this now, but then we can have this America. Look at this great America with all this open space and big apartments. It's like, that's not your world, though. That's the world that we created. Those are our values. You came from India, and you're bringing India here. That's why you have 20 fucking people in one little apartment. So, I didn't experience that myself, so I voted for Hillary. But I did experience getting fucked over by third worlders over and over again. Like in Chile. I was an English teacher in Chile, and I was there for 5 years. First year, institute. Second year, half and half. Third year, half and half. Fourth and fifth year, I was only working for myself. But yeah, like you could never become friends with somebody you teach English to in Chile, because if you're a teacher, you're like one of the idiots. You don't make much money, and so don't talk to them. Like they're idiots. And the wealth discrepancy, it causes problems. And to live in a country that has this kind of it's a Christian belief. It's the communism. I know the communists in Russia, they're like, we're not Christian, but what I'm talking about is communal living, like sharing and having funds for, people, kind of like the Roman Empire. You know, if one province didn't have grain, they would send in grain and help them out. Then the Christian church, you know, people help the homeless and all this kind of stuff. The little values that build up. If you're going to get a bunch of third worlders in here, I mean, they like it. It's kind of like a pressure system, you know? It's like you spend so much time having this nice warm room, and then you open up the door and all the fucking cold air comes in. Because they like it, because the cold air likes it here when it's warm. But then it makes it cold here too, you know? Like we have to have, and I actually have a unique perspective because I went traveling. Like I was this hippie, multicultural, got married to a third worlder. And I love her, by the way. I wouldn't I don't have any problem with her, but I wouldn't. I can tell how she wouldn't be the person who I would choose to set up a country or like a city. Like, let's make a colony and set up a city. I wouldn't get her. She's from the third world. She doesn't know anything. I'd have to get somebody who I like even less, who actually knows things. You know what I mean? So it's that. That's why Donald Trump won. He was the only person saying he's smart enough to say what people wanted. Like Scott Baio, Chachi. He's like, he says what we all thinking. That's what we're all thinking. Like, that's what the voters are thinking. Like, what the hell are we doing? I mean, wealth discrepancy is bad, but how are you going to prove that you're going to fix wealth discrepancy? And actually, Donald Trump did a better job, I think, in the last, because he's like, I get rid of carried interest. They never did it. He got rid of fucking Glass-Steagall. Her husband got rid of Glass-Steagall. Give me the chance. I'll get rid of carried interest. So let's see if Donald Trump will get rid of carried interest to help with the self-wealth discrepancy. But yeah, they wanted. I lost my train of thought again. They wanted somebody different, and Americans wanted the one thing that they really wanted was like one thing that you can put your finger around. And one way to fix the country is by getting the third worlders out of here. So we can raise our minimum wage, and we can have people who actually believe in work and don't just want to come here and take advantage of everything that's given. Because that's kind of what it is. Get a bunch of Indians coming here, and it's like these nice big open apartment buildings and these nice big open parks. And they're like, oh, let's all come here then. All of us, we come in and fill it up with people. That's what you do, right? Open space, people, fill it up. That's what we did back in India, So, and you can't say that without being sounding like some kind of an asshole. And so people are afraid to admit. I mean, I've never seen anything like this. I don't think anybody's ever seen like any of this before. Somebody as unpopular as Donald Trump, everybody hates him. All the smart people hate him, wouldn't even be his friend, and he gets president. Everybody votes for him. It's because people feel that strongly. People are like shaking with anger. Like, I don't care. I'll vote. I don't care who the fuck I'll vote for. I'll vote for Satan himself if he says, hey, let's get those guys out of here so we can raise the minimum wage. And it's true. And I have heard stuff about unfair trade practices with China, and I don't know the details of it, but I believe it happens. And I do believe that Chinese have a different attitude than us. All Chinese know that 1,000 years ago, China was the top dog in the world. They had the most technology back in the 1200s, 1200s. When we were in the Dark Ages, they had everything. They were like the Roman Empire at its height. And they all know that now. They may not know much else, but they know that. And they've got their whole population and their whole politicians just trying to undercut us and to fuck us by putting our steel businesses steel companies out of business. And then we don't have any more steel companies because we buy Chinese steel because they're undercutting us because they have a long-term plan, sell it super cheap, and then we have no more steel, and then they jack the prices up. That's what Chinese people do when they're here. They jack the prices up as much as they can whenever they get away with it. I was in a town living in my van, and this woman, Chinese woman, could barely speak English, charged me like $60 to do laundry because she charged me like dry cleaning all my pants and stuff. Because she asked me and like I couldn't understand her. I'm like, just do simple. She's like, and then she's just like, I think she did it on purpose. And this other guy, right here, I give him change. And I'm like, where's my change? He's like, oh, you gave me all. You took all of my money because I didn't count it. Chinese guy. And I've heard that from other people too. That's just the stuff that they do. But they've got a long-term plan to do that. Undercut us. I know I sound like Alex Jones here, and I think he's crazy, but I mean, that's what I believe it. And that's why Donald Trump got elected. They've got their oligarchy of 300 people controlling 800 million people with a long-term plan to undercut the shit out of America and Europe so that they could build cars, and then they sell it to us extra expensive. Schwinn Bicycles went to China, right, to give China a good deal to help them give their workers to buy bikes. They just stole their business plan, and build bikes themselves, put Schwinn out of business. So I agree with Donald Trump that we need to buckle up. We need to tighten up our borders. We need to fortify what made us America in the first place, and not just be like, oh, let's just let all these third worlders in and let them bring third world and bring the general productivity quality of our country down, the quality of the people down. And then that'll make people racist, man, because then people will start drawing lines, comparisons. Now, I was saying something kind of racist before about how white people stick up for themselves more because they had to in like Northern Europe. But generally, I don't believe there's a difference between the races. But if you're going to get such a marked difference in all these different cultures, all these different third worlders coming in with their little third world culture, sardine people, and living in with white people, then it's the black people. Like black people like do more crime than white people, but it's because of the socioeconomics, not because of race. But that's not what people are going to perceive as. They're going to perceive it as the race, and then there's going to become race wars. You're going to have more and more. I mean, thank God the FBI did such a good job to thwart that bombing in Garden City. But if they hadn't, they would have killed all those people. And there's probably other people, other white crazy people going crazy, trying to bomb neighborhoods of brown people. So let's just put the brakes on it. Let's let them overpopulate their own country, okay, so that we can keep our country. So I can get a job at the supermarket, so I can like be and thank God marijuana got legalized recreationally in California and some other states, Massachusetts, and then medically in Florida, so that maybe we'll allow people to be stoners and have jobs. Like, why can't I get a job as a fucking supermarket stalker, dude? Like, what the fuck? I'm a college graduate. I look at my website. Like, what the fuck? Am I really that stupid? Am I really that worthless to society? I can't even get a fucking labor job? Like, what the fuck? Yet they're giving to the third worlders. They're just doing fine, man. Doing dingle dingle language across the fucking street. So it's not like it's that big of a deal. I could just sell my car. I'm on Medicaid, so I'm all right. But I understand. That's why people voted for Trump, and that's why it shows. Look, Trump winning shows how we can't be politically correct. How people were literally afraid to admit that they're voting for Trump because they don't like the immigration, because it makes them look racist. Oh no, now I'm going to be called racist. People take that way too fucking far, dude. And some of the people who pretend to be the most holy or whatever, the biggest assholes. There's this book called what was that guy, Frederick Douglass? He wrote a book called he was an ex-slave in the 1800s, and he was an escaped slave. And so he knew all about the slave plantations. He said the slave owners who were the most religious were the biggest assholes. Because it was all pretense. They're just trying to justify, why they're dicks. And so, yeah. How did I get on that? How did I get on that tangent? Because I had more to say about that. Oh, yeah, the political correctness, dude. Like, I was in college, and I lived with a bunch of people in this big house. It was like 16 people. Because I was the only guy in the lease. I was on both of the leases. Because everybody else was like, I don't got no money. And then I got shafted at the end, like $300 I think it was. Nobody wanted to pay. Oh yeah, political correctness. Yeah, and so there's this, like, one of those hippie people, this hippie chick in there, like, using me. And I mentioned I was a hippie. She's like, you're not a hippie. And I should have been like, what do you mean? I'm gonna let everybody live in my house. I'm a hippie. But then there's this other kid. He's like hanging out. He's my friend, and he's like, but he didn't really fit in with the other ones. And he's like, yeah, black people, he's from Oklahoma. Yeah, black people like the 40s. Oh my God, you're racist. The same chick who accused me of not being a hippie. Oh my God, because she dressed in a granny outfit, so she thought she was a real hippie. She's like, you're so racist, you're so racist. And then the whole room blew up yelling at this kid. Oh my God, you're fucking racist, you're fucking racist. And I didn't say anything. I was like, holy shit. But, in retrospect, to say black people like 40s, that's not racist. It's in all the music videos. It's in all the movies. It's in Boys in the Hood, man, holding a 40 with the paper bag, like, to make an observation. You know what I mean? So that, it got way out of hand back in those days, I think. So somebody like Donald Trump makes it possible for people to speak their mind. And that's what America's all about. I mean, if you want to get a country full of a totalitarian autocracy, plutocratic autocracy controlled by like 300 people at the top, what you would want is a nation full of like basically what third worlders are, who just people who aren't very educated, don't really have any opinions of themselves for themselves. That's probably what they're thinking about. These big company corporation people. Let's bring all the Somalis in because they work for less, but also they're gonna be like lapping out of our hands more. They're gonna be like, thank you for giving us such little. Oh my God, you know what I mean? I was listening to the Decline and Fall of Roman Empire, and they were mentioning at one point, um, um, yeah, if you're a really big tyrant, the people will like be more thankful for him and show more gratitude for him as doing one thing that's like that's 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 good for the people, you know, because they get so accustomed to not having anything, and so that's basically what third world people are. It's I don't know, it's almost like a long term plan to create some kind of totalitarian two-tiered system, you know, slaves and then the masters, because that's what you would do. You would bring all the third worlders in, bring the minimum wage down, cause the race wars. You know, use that as a reason to say that you have to have a totalitarian, you know, country to keep everything in order. So like Donald Trump is pretty bad, but if you're going to look at because of that whole totalitarian possibility, but I think our Constitution's strong enough and our values so far still, we still have enough white people in America to to keep the Constitution and to keep it from becoming a totalitarian country and remain a democracy. Um, but yeah, I think we should get some of those third worlders out of here. Um, but to deport them, I don't think that's necessary. Why not just? You don't have to like go so far over, you know, and cause problems. And I was telling this to my friend who's voting for Trump, like, why don't you just change the law? You know, and I'm sure that's what Donald Trump will do more than Hillary because that's what he's talking to. But you just change the law. You make the work visas more strict, and if people can't work here legally, and you can enforce it because of the whole digitization of everything, they have to go home because they can't get a job here, and then they go home. You just change the law. You don't have to go to their houses. But anyway, that's what people are thinking, and that's what I'm talking about. Now, you know, I'll probably, you know, this is some false hippie bitches come across as being some kind of a racist or whatever, but you can't be a racist if you're actually married to somebody from another race in another country. You know what I mean? That's going a little bit too far. But that's why Donald Trump won. And so, you know, if you want to win, like if Hillary Clinton wanted to win, number one, she beat fucking Bernie Sanders. And so we had our chance and we blew it with Bernie Sanders. So you know, don't cry if Donald Trump beats Hillary. Hillary is a piece of shit. In a perfect world, you know, I mean, she's a good person from the old world with all the secret stuff that they were doing. But now it's all come to light. We're done with it. So, you know, like we didn't even know what the freaking Glass-Steagall Act was until a couple of years ago. Now everybody's talking about it, and we all know what it is. You know, the world's waking up, and so you can't live like that anymore. So get rid of Hillary. Good riddance. Thank God she's not president. And let's just hope to God that Donald Trump has some sense. He can maintain some equilibrium and have some, you know, listen to some smart and the people around him. And we can kind of send a message to the world and change the law enough to kind of solidify our culture and make it so that when you see a third worlder or some brown-skinned person from another country, it's more of a novelty, and it's some, oh, cool, you're here to be in my country. Oh, isn't that great? Instead of feeling threatened, oh my God, you're gonna like take my job, you know, or take my whole fucking neighborhood. I guess people are complaining about that in England. There's entire towns, villages of just Pakistanis, and you go there and it's like Pakistan. It's like, oh shit. At least that's the feeling that people get. You know, maybe if you open your mind and you try to hang out with somebody, you know, they'll be friends to you, you know, and they're not as dicks as they seem, but still they don't have the same cultural capabilities, you know. And so I'm not really that pissed off, bummed about Donald Trump winning because that's what happens when you. I mean, we need to make a change, and he's gonna make all the other politicians um, not be so afraid of speaking their mind. You know, you're gonna get like a Democrat next time being like, "Yeah, a black dude from Somalia shot my wife last year. Fuck those guys." You know. Now I'll say something like about that. I mean, it's true. Like the guy who killed 70 people in Nice, France, he was a Muslim. Okay, it's just how they are. It wasn't a French guy. It was a Muslim. If it happens again, it's probably going to be a Muslim. There was that white guy in Norway killed like 70 people, but I think most of the time it is Muslims. Um, the guy who shut up the nightclub in Florida, he was born in America, but his dad was a gay-hating Muslim. You know, I mean, what do people do back in the Middle East? They're always bombing Israel and Syria, bombing the shit. That's what they do. Okay, you learn from your parents, who learn from their parents. It's part of the culture, and so yeah, it is a problem getting too many people and then undermining your culture, and so. Um, Instead of allowing immigrants into your culture and raping all of your women in Cologne, Germany, um, I don't know how much of that is actual true, but I heard that's what was going on. Why not just drop a bunch of food in Syria, let them stay in Syria, and live how they did thousands of years ago? They're not so weak that they have to live in nice apartment buildings in Germany. They could live in tents in Syria and just eat the manna or whatever. Drop them bread from the sky and let them chow on that, and they'll live. Like what else does a human being need? I could live up in the mountains right now and eat bread and be perfectly happy. I could do my yoga and stuff. Like they don't have to come to America and rape women or rape in America, rape women in Cologne, Germany and stuff. I had a friend, or I knew someone who was in a woman who was in a talked to a woman who was in a train in Germany, but I guess she had like Middle Eastern features or something. I mean, she looked white to me, but I guess she had a little bit of Middle Eastern features in her dress. And all of a sudden, this Muslim guy started screaming at her in the subway, "Put your hijab on, put your hijab on, damn woman! You have to do what women are, you bitch!" And she's like, "What? I'm American. What the hell are you talking about?" But she could speak German, so she heard what he was saying. And she's like, "Fuck you, I'm an American." And he was like, "Oh, fuck," you know what I mean? So they actually, and so what if they do it with other women who look white, but there's a little bit of German or Middle Eastern, and they're yelling at them like they need to be Muslim, but they're in Germany? You know what? Yeah, that'll piss people off. That'll piss people off big time who've been in that situation. I've never been in that situation. But my blood's already curdling for the people who have been in that situation because I mean, let's face it, what they do is hideous, it's ugly, it's nasty, it's a hideous, ugly, nasty culture. It's not because of the religion. Well, I mean, it is because of the religion, but it's not because of what's written in the Quran. I mean, all the good people of the religion, there's plenty of good stuff about Islam. But that form that they have is ugly, and it can spread. And if it doesn't spread, what it'll do is it'll make white people in America and Europe freak the fuck out and become terrorists themselves, and you don't want that. So, it's not that bad that Donald Trump was elected. I'm not that bummed out about it. I'm really not. Because I'm an eternal optimist, and my attitude about Donald Trump changed, because I have to be optimist no matter what. And I did not like him because he reminded me of Hitler. But technically, Hillary Clinton has done a lot more crooked stuff than he has. He's just been a businessman. He's probably done a lot of crooked stuff, but just in the private sector, not representing the government. So let's give him a chance. Let's give the guy a chance to do it right. We know that he has a huge ego and he wants people to love him and he wants to have a good legacy. And he has a very good chance to achieve that. All he has to do is give two shits about poor people, poor Americans. Kick out the Muslims and the Mexicans or whatever so we can raise up the minimum wage. Raise the minimum wage anyway, even as much as you can. Get rid of carried interest. And try to and he's actually, personality wise, he's good. I mean, the people who he can relate to are poor people, poor simple people. Scott Baio, Chachi. And Amorosa, black people. I mean, when he says nobody loves black people more than me, I saw him say it to a reporter who said something like, "Oh yeah, about blacks." He's like, he actually got physically angry. I could see, I could actually relate to it. I could empathize with him. He got physically angry. He's like, ugh, and he had to turn away and was like shaking. I think he really does believe that he loves black people, because I think he really does believe that he's like that normal average guy. And so that would mean that if somebody's like that, they're going to be a lot more likely to relate to a poor person, as opposed to somebody like Hillary Clinton, who's so false with her stoicness that how can she even relate to you? Like, how do you even know that there's a person there who wants to help you? Maybe she just wants to help herself. Like, well, who is this person? But Donald Trump is actually a person, he's like, I love the poor people. I want to have carrot interest. Maybe he will. I mean, if he's smart enough to know that helping poor people will help his image, boom. And he doesn't belong to those other people. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's a good thing. So go Donald Trump, man. Trump, 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 Trump. I'm sorry I said anything bad about you. Let's unify under Trump and give freedom to the stoners who want to smoke weed and drive down the road high and say fuck you to whoever you want. Freedom. That's America, man. Let's not let these little third worlders come in here with their meekness and sardines packing in the rooms and working for less, undercutting you so that they can get you later and take over your country and make you have to live with a bunch of little dingleberries in the park. Fuck that. Judeo-white Christian. Yeah. Let's do it like that. Hippie style. White power hippie style. So that we don't have to tip over the edge and fucking go totally crazy and redo World War II. Okay. Go Trump. Peace out. Heil Trump.